Since taking over at the University of Louisville back in December, head coach Jeff Brohm and company have made it an effort to recruit the Southern Florida area, California, even the surrounding states of Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana very consistently. But one area that you cannot overlook is the state of Georgia. On today's episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast, we're going to talk about 6 new prospects to focus on in 2024 and 25. In the state of Georgia. So with that being said, let's get right on into the show.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. As always, I want to say thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder that the show is free on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team, every day. Jeff Brohm and company, 6 new offers from the state of Georgia, or prospects from the state of Georgia. We're going to talk about those prospects on today's episode of the show, beginning by talking about why recruiting the state of Georgia is sort of the unsung hero for the University of Louisville over the past couple seasons, along with talking about those specific prospects. Those prospects: Ricardo Jones, Christian Peterson, Brandon Hood, Kahlil House, Malachi Toliver, and Antwann Hill. Obviously, a lot of names to talk about. So we'll begin by talking about the recruiting of the state of Georgia. Obviously, Jeff Brohm and company, since taking over at Louisville, they've made it a key point of emphasis to hold together Flyville 23, which they did that for the most part. Players from Florida, Southern Florida, like Stanquan Clark, William Faust, Kataris Hicks. Also, California, Pierce Clarkson, Aaron Williams, Jaleel McClain, Jamari Johnson, so on and so forth. But you also can't overlook the state of Georgia. Madden Sanker, Adonijah Green, 2 prospects from the Peach State that signed with Louisville recently. And the Cardinals have been going to Georgia basically since Bobby 2.0 and going into the Peachtree State and getting, I don't think it's Peachtree State, the Peach State, whatever Georgia's referred to as. The Cardinals have gone into Georgia and have succeeded in getting some top prospects, maybe not necessarily rankings-wise, but prospects that were a little bit overlooked. I shouldn't have said top prospects. More so what I mean is prospects that were overlooked that came to Louisville and made a name for themselves and definitely shined on the big stage. The transfer portal, they've gotten players from the University of Georgia as well, Josh Harvey Clemens being one of those players. You also look the past couple seasons for the Cardinals, even under Scott Satterfield, beginning with Flyville 21. Victor Brown from Grayson High School in that area of Georgia. You know, Kewan Brown in Flyville 21 from the Atlanta area. Jackson Hamilton, TJ Quinn, Jalen Alderman. Been a lot of players from the state of Georgia that have helped out this program. And it seems like, yes, when you talk about Jeff Brohm and company and their footprints in terms of recruiting, you're going to talk about the local areas. We're going to talk about Kentucky, the Kentucky-Anna area as it pertains to the state of Indiana as well. We talked about a week ago about the recruiting of the state of Ohio and why that could be a fruitful pipeline for the University of Louisville to create. Obviously, South Florida, the state of California, we'll see how that holds up in terms of California for this cycle and more. But obviously, 2 prospects committed from the South Florida area, TJ Capers and Isaac Brown, 5-star and 4-star respectively. So it doesn't seem like that pipeline is going anywhere anytime soon, hopefully. But also one place that gets overlooked a lot that has been very, very good to the University of Louisville over the past couple seasons. And it seems like with the activity of Brohm and company over the past week or so, Georgia is definitely in the plans for Brohm and the recruiting staff. 6 new offers that were handed out just recently. A couple of those were on campus for the brunch and ball was the official term of the big junior day weekend that the team had a couple weeks ago. But Georgia is a recruiting hotbed, as many people know. You talk about the 2024 class alone. The 50 prospects, 49 of those are inside of the top 450, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. 43 of those are all 4 stars. That is an incredible number. You look at kind of the deviation of 4-star prospects nationally, and 43 of those out of probably 350 are from one state. Obviously, we talked about Florida is an area to focus on. Ohio's got a lot of those numbers as well. Texas, California, so on and so forth. We know where, mainly from a historical standpoint, where the most talent comes from across the country. It's the Southeast, the Southwest, the South in terms of Texas, Louisiana, Florida, Georgia, Ohio, so on and so forth, right? Pennsylvania, even more so. So I think that this goes without saying, and of course you'll say, well, Dalton, does this really need a segment of its own? Of course, Jeff Brohm and company should try to get the top prospects nationally. But I think it definitely deserved a segment, because I don't think that the state of Georgia gets enough credit in terms of Louisville recruiting over the past decade or so. Maybe it wasn't so prevalent in Charlie Strong's tenure, but when Bobby came back for his second stint, even more so when Scott Satterfield took over after his first 2 classes, beginning with Flyville 21, the Cardinals went down to Georgia to try to get some top prospects, and beginning in 2023, Flyville 23, they went in and got some very highly rated guys. Madden Sanker, top 200 prospect, one of the best offensive linemen in the country, had offers from just about all of the top programs, decided to come up to the 502. Adonijah Green had some SEC offers on the table. Obviously, some prospects that are from around that area. It's hard to take away from Georgia, from Florida, from Auburn, from Alabama, LSU, the SEC powerhouses, so on and so forth. So when Louisville's able to go into the state of Georgia and get top 500 prospects, that's huge. And I think that it creates momentum heading into the the Flyville 24 class. Obviously, Chris Barclay, the running backs coach at Louisville, has been recruiting the state of Georgia very, very solidly for Purdue. He was instrumental in the recruitment of Kewan Brown from Atlanta, a top 800 prospect. I think he has ties to Georgia. I could be completely wrong. I thought I read that somewhere. But regardless, I think it does deserve its own segment, because it deserves recognition, because I think that Georgia is going to be a very pivotal point. Obviously, you're not going to put your eggs all in one basket in terms of recruiting. You're not going to get 25 commitments from the South Florida area. You're not going to get 25 commitments from Kentuckiana or the Ohio area or the Midwest, spanning into Missouri and Illinois. You're not going to get 25 prospects from Texas or California. Obviously, the staff is going to do their due diligence even more so than they did, over the past couple seasons when it comes to local recruiting. And I would expect there be more local prospects in recruiting classes moving forward. We've seen that South Florida is going to be a big aspect of recruiting. Hopefully the team can continue to try to go into Texas and into California. But I think the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I'm not saying that Louisville's going to go into the state of Georgia and go out and get, top 100 prospects consistently. Of the top, the top 150, looks like 25. The top 25 players in Georgia are in the top 150. So there's a lot of players, from the, central Georgia area, through Atlanta, Marietta, Alpharetta, spanning on down into the Savannah area, Valdosta, and even north towards Chattanooga and that, part of the state, Lawrenceville, Cartersville. There's a lot of talent throughout the state of Georgia spread out. So I'm interested to see how this staff can recruit the state of Georgia moving forward. But let's take a little bit of a more specific approach. 6 new prospects to talk about in the state of Georgia, 5 of them in 2024, 1 in 2025. We'll talk about 3 of the 2024 prospects in the next segment, talking about Ricardo Jones, Christian Peterson, and Brandon Hood. We'll do that here in just a second after we talk about our friends and the title sponsor of the show, FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they've been the #1 sportsbook in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports very fun and very easy. They have all of your favorite bets from the money line to point spreads, even to player props. Some of the bets on there this weekend for the AFC and NFC Conference Championship games are very interesting, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets. Let me repeat that. First $5 bet nets you a free $150 free bet, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Hey, Cardinal fans, thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen every day. Make sure you check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Everything you need to know about college basketball all in one place. Plus, hear from big-name experts, insiders, coaches, and players. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Moving right on along, talking about 3 prospects that the University of Louisville has recently offered over the past week or so. First, I would give a shout out to Cardinal authorities, Michael McCammon. He compiled a great comprehensive article on CardinalAuthority.com, the 24/7 Sports Louisville site, that talks about all of the offers, not only from Georgia, but across the country that the Cardinals have given out over the past week or so. We'll begin by talking about Ricardo Jones, probably the biggest offer over the past week or so. Top 100 prospect, ranked as the 75th best prospect in the 24/7 Sports Composite, 6th best safety, and only the 15th best prospect in the state of Georgia. We talk about how potent the recruiting talent is in the state of Georgia. Well, if you're ranked 75th, you're only the 15th best prospect. That's incredible. 6'3", safety, 200 pounds, from Warner Robins, Georgia, Northside High School star. There's actually 3 prospects that were offered from the city of Warner Robins. So that's something to focus on, potentially Louisville trying to get in well with the high school coaches down in that area. 2 of those played for the same high school. Jones has great size for his position, 6'3", 200 pounds. His playing style reminds me a ton of Calvin Pryor, sideline to sideline defensive back that does a great job of jumping passing lanes, reading the opposing quarterback's eyes, being able to be solid in the rushing department as well, getting up towards the line of scrimmage and being able to get after the quarterback as well. But just overall solid in all aspects of the defensive game. With his size, being a safety, you wonder if he could be like Ben Perry and slide into that outside linebacker role, or if he projects to be more of a traditional safety at the next level. With his size, you go back to what Michael McCammon wrote about Ricardo Jones. He has a lot of scholarships already, obviously. Arkansas, Florida State, Auburn, Stanford, Pittsburgh, Tennessee, Michigan State, Nebraska, Notre Dame, Mississippi, Michigan, Michigan State, Georgia Tech, so on and so forth. This makes a lot of sense, obviously, if you're Louisville, because he's the top 100 prospect. It'll be interesting now. I think with all of these prospects, it's getting them on visits, getting them on campus, trying to get them in the fall on official visits, so on and so forth. This will probably be the toughest battle of the 6, considering the caliber of recruit that Louisville's going after. But overall, Ricardo Jones is a prospect that is going to be one of the most elite defensive back prospects in the nation. So definitely one to focus on here. Another player to focus on is Christian Peterson, also a safety. He's from the Atlanta area of Westlake High School. 2024 prospect is 5'11", 180 pounds. Doesn't have a ranking yet on the 24/7 Sports Composite. When you watch his film, it's very evident that he is going to be in line for a major rankings boost. Does a great job of high pointing the football with his 5'11" frame. Reminds me a lot of Gerard Holloman in the way that he just makes plays. Is just seemingly there a lot. Obviously, it's a highlight reel on Huddle. You go back and you watch the highlights. It points out, obviously, the successful plays. But overall, I think that this is a prospect that is one of those players sort of in a very talented area that gets overlooked because of the sheer numbers of top players. Christian Peterson, the offer sheet essentially speaks for itself here. He has offers from Kentucky, Michigan, Pittsburgh, Maryland, Boston College, Auburn, Cincinnati, Georgia Tech, Purdue, Central Florida, so on and so forth. So, like I said, has the offer sheet of a player that is probably going to be a mid 3-star, I would assume, when the next rankings come out. I'm not necessarily so sure how that's going to translate, but I think that the statistics, the film on tape speaks for itself. 5'11", does a good job of high pointing the football, reading the opposing offense, a good job of just sniffing out plays and being able to create plays in the second level of the defense, and does a good job of in terms of tackling technique as well. Has solid size, 5'11", 180 pounds. It's not the biggest that a defensive back has ever been, but I think that that's pretty respectable size for a safety. Does a good job of, like I said, tackling with his technique and everything else. So a very interesting prospect that's likely going to rise up in the rankings. Another player that isn't ranked yet but is going to rise up in the rankings is running back Brandon Hood from McDonough, Georgia. Eagles Landing Christian Academy, 5'10", 190-pound running back, like I mentioned, doesn't currently have a ranking, but got injured this past season. Had an injury, I think only played about 5 games or so, but he's got a lot of big-time offers. We're talking Kentucky, LSU, Michigan State, Penn State, Pittsburgh. 3 seasons so far, just over 2,500 yards, 32 rushing touchdowns. A player that is also starting to rise onto collegiate radars. A little bit underrated, number one, due to, like I mentioned, when there's so many talented prospects, highly rated guys in the state of Georgia or in any area that's highly rated or is a recruiting hotbed, it's going to be evident that there's players that are going to get overlooked. Diamonds in the rough, if you will. Louisville's made it, kind of their bread and butter in the recruiting world of taking diamonds in the rough, underrated prospects, and making them very successful at the collegiate level. Not all of them, but a good amount of them. So Brandon Hood is like Christian Peterson in the sense of he's definitely, if the rankings are going to show anything, it's that they're going to be eventually ranked, both Peterson and Hood. So 2 to look forward to. Louisville getting in the mix early. Well, maybe not in the mix early, but getting in line for both prospects before they get their rankings updated. So 2 to focus on as the next couple months go forward, trying to get both on campus. You also saw, like I mentioned, Ricardo Jones, top 100 prospect. A lot of top programs across the country are going to try to be involved in this recruitment. Possibly Georgia as well, coming off back-to-back national championships. It's definitely going to be tough to take a prospect out of the Peach State if Kirby Smart and company are going after them. So Ricardo Jones, Christian Peterson, Brandon Hood, 3 of the 6 that have been offered recently. Let's now look at the other 3. Malachi Toliver, Kahlil House, and Antwann Hill. Before we do that, I want to give a shout out to you all for essentially making, like I said, Locked On Louisville your first listen every day. You can find us on all streaming services, free 5 days a week. Your team every day from YouTube, WHAS 11 Plus, Amazon, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, so on and so forth. There's so many ways to follow the show. Thank you goes out to all that are sharing the show, supporting the show on social media and in person. Word of mouth is critical. Those that are rating it on Apple Music or Apple Podcast, Google, whatever may have you. Those that are subscribing on YouTube. We just passed 1,130 YouTube subscribers. So very, very appreciative of how the show is continuing to progress for the fan base. And if you have any suggestions or any questions that you may have, want to add to the mailbag, so on and so forth, feel free to DM me at @defense_, as you see in the Twitter logo below. And all my DMs are open, even if I don't follow you. So nonetheless, let's now get into the third segment of the show. 3 prospects to talk about, 3 more, 3 of the 6. One is Malachi Toliver. Malachi Toliver, offensive lineman from the from the Cartersville area. He recently visited campus for the brunch and bowl? I forget what they call it, but regardless, the Cartersville, Georgia native is quickly rising up recruiting rankings. Currently, he's the 570th best recruit in the 24/7 Sports Composite, the 47th best offensive tackle, 52nd best in the state of Georgia. 6'5", 295-pound offensive tackle from the Cartersville area. But he's a player that is consistently rising up the rankings. In an article by Gabe Brooks of 24/7 Sports and Weekly Rankings Notes, talks about some 2024 prospects that are starting to have standout times. This is what he said. Malachi Toliver turned heads in the fall as a 2024 offensive tackle on the rise, debuting as a strong 3-star. Toliver owns good size in the 6'5", 295-pound neighborhood and encouraging tape from his junior campaign, which revealed run game conviction and pass pro competency that could translate to the outside and interior alike. Toliver, who also has some limited shot put and discus experience under belt, primarily played right tackle this past season, helping Cartersville to a 12-2 record, has offers from Miami, South Carolina, Michigan, Arkansas, Tennessee, Auburn, LSU, North Carolina, and others. So that just goes to show you the type of prospect that Louisville will be trying to recruit at the offensive tackle position moving forward. Another offensive tackle is Kahlil House from the Warner Robins, Georgia area, plays for Houston County, who I also think that Antwann Hill, who we're also going to talk about, plays for Houston County. 2024 offensive tackle, 6'4", 300 pounds. This is a recruitment that Louisville is trying to get in the mix early on. Doesn't have really many offers outside of Troy, Georgia State, and Eastern Michigan. Doesn't even have a prospect ranking yet, but he's a player that apparently has been very solid on film. And obviously, I think that if Louisville is trying to go in on these diamond in the rough recruitments, they're trying to essentially try to build the rapport early, build those relationships early so that they can maybe try to be in a favorable position from signing day. One of the more interesting offers that the Cardinals handed out is the 6'4", 2025 quarterback Antwann Hill of Warner Robins, Georgia, Houston County High School quarterback, 6'4", 195 pounds, ranked as the 57th best prospect in the 24/7 Sports Composite, 5th best quarterback in the country, 7th best in the state of Georgia. He has been a guy that a lot of players or a lot of coaches are going after. This past season was a second-team All-American. Very, very talented prospect from the Georgia area. And one interesting thing that I found from a statistical, or it wasn't even a statistical, it was a tidbit from the national championship, was in like the past 6 or 7 national championships, at least one starting quarterback has been from the state of Georgia. that's very, very interesting to focus on. Now, I'm not saying that trend is going to continue because, Stetson Bennett's played in multiple national championships. Trevor Lawrence played in one as well. So, so on and so forth. But you look at this now, actually, Lawrence was in multiple national championships. But like I said, you're in a position now to where he's going to be recruited by some of the top programs around the country, and Louisville trying to get in the mix now. Offers from so many of the top programs, Texas A&M, Arkansas, Georgia, Notre Dame, Pittsburgh, Tennessee, so on and so forth. So Antwann Hill, a very notable offer in the 2025 class. So talked about the state of Georgia recruiting and why it should be a focal point moving forward, and 6 new offers: Ricardo Jones, Christian Peterson, Brandon Hood, Kahlil House, Malachi Toliver, Antwann Hill. Maybe a little bit overwhelming for one podcast setting, but just wanted to introduce those names as some new offers, as we're going to cover all of recruiting for not only Cardinal football, but Cardinal basketball and Cardinal sports as a whole. So that's going to wrap up this Tuesday edition of the show, or maybe Monday edition of the show, depending on when this gets published. But everyone have a great day. We'll see you back here very soon.